This episode of The Unstarving Musician is sponsored by Liner Notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry pros I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for Liner Notes. Liner Notes is an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and Liner Notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabanzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals with occasional special topic episodes featuring yours truly. A glimpse into the minds of my varied guests, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode. I am happy and feeling grateful to be in your earbuds or on your speakers today. What are you doing? I'm always wondering what you guys do when you listen to the podcast, or at least I've been thinking about that lately. What do you do when you're listening to The Unstarving Musician? Whatever it is, I hope it's productive or fun or something good. It's feeling a little chilly in Querétaro for my taste today. It's not cold, but it's just not warm. But I'm happy for the weather. We had rain last night. It's great. We might get rain this afternoon. I cannot complain. I'm living my best life. Trying to, anyway. Let's see here. I saw an outstanding performance last night by the Javier Regalado Jazz Quartet. I'm acquainted with Javier, the principal member of the band, composer of the band, from another band that I follow here in Querétaro. But anyway, nice job to Javier and his band. Got to sit with a dude that was sitting in with them, a piano player, who was a real nice guy. Always like meeting new musicians and making new friends. My guest for this episode, but before we get to that, I am always talking about needing your support here at The Unstarving Musician. In fact, the new mantra is your support equals love, but there's a new, easier way to do it. I just recently updated our crowd sponsor page with a tip jar, so now it's just like click, leave a tip, done. You can find it at unstarvingmusician.com, and you know what? I'll even put a link in the show notes for this episode. And hey, again, your support equals love. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yes, my guest is singer, songwriter, producer Sam J Garfield. He has a new self-produced single out called Monster. Sam has been an actor. He's a sound engineer and music producer. Now he's leaning into songwriting and releasing his own music. He's a nice kid. Good looking, too. Check out his amazing coif. Find a picture of him with the... Actually, just visit the show notes for this page. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. But yeah, he's got great hair. I caught him at a time when he's taking a breather from a long stretch of working a lot. Apparently he was working so much, people around him got a little concerned, but he's young, learning that life's not just about working all the time. He also sounds like he's learning a lot about himself as a person, which we talk about. He shares a lot of reflection and introspection. Is that redundant? Reflection and introspection? I don't know. I think he's working things out. We also talk about his new song Monsters and finding therapy in that song Monsters. Getting started as a sound engineer and how he attracts opportunity as a producer. I love that part of our conversation. In fact, I think it's my favorite part of the conversation. He's young, but he's pretty old school. It's a great reminder that old school works when seeking opportunity. So we talk about all that and more, always more, right? Find all things Sam J Garfield on Instagram at Sam J Garfield. Please enjoy my chat with Sam J Garfield and check it out on Apple Podcasts and all the other podcast places. All right, here's me and Sam. Congrats on your upcoming release, Monsters. It's coming out just in, less than a couple of weeks, a week and some days as we record here.
Yeah, it really is coming up August 23rd. So it's definitely coming up fast and hard, and it feels like, you know how it goes. You put in all this work and all this time and all this preparation, and now all of a sudden here it is knocking on the door so fast.
Are you excited?
I am excited. I mean, this is the first time that I've ever put out anything of this kind of magnitude for something that was myself and that I haven't produced for another artist. And definitely my first time with visuals like this. I've never done a music video on this kind of scale or anything that was just solely for my own art that's unfiltered and kind of unadulterated by any other lens or coming through any other artist.
Oh, nice. I don't think I got the video. Is it done or is it still in the work?
It is done. I'm not sure. I think I can have Margaret also send that over to you if you want to have take a look at it or anything as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's going out to I think it's got some like final tweaking, coloring touches over this week, but other than that, the it's ready to go. It looks great. I'm really happy about it. I think this is probably the first time I didn't really compromise at all with any of the like artistic choices or like when we sit down and have a vision in the beginning of our sit down for artistic direction, sometimes it's like, okay, what do we want to do on a project or on a video or on a visual, and you do the best you can. Sometimes you have to cut corners, sometimes you have to compromise, sometimes you have to do that. But on this project, I mean, I saw the end result and it was exactly what I wanted, which was a very cool feeling.
That's so nice. Have some of the compromises in the past been outside of, budget, but more like,
Yeah, like budget or like certain locations that you can't find, or you just like you have this kind of crazy wild idea and you don't know if you can pull it off with like with what's available to you, and not having some kind of an extreme budget to get the effects or something that you want. There's always some kind of like corner. I feel like as as emerging and independent artists and kind of where we're at, there's sometimes you have to kind of create some sort of corner cut to make sure you get done what you want to get done. And I really just had the team of people around me to pull this one together for me exactly how I wanted it to. So it was a very, very good feeling. And I feel very blessed that so many people jumped in to really add their talents and time and skills into this one.
fantastic. And did you say, and maybe you didn't say, but did you self-produce the song?
Yes, I pretty much always like, I very rarely am not the one who's producing, mixing, mastering, engineering, doing everything for myself or most of the artists that I work with as well.
And so I've read a lot about and I've heard a lot of your work, but about you as a composer and sorry, I mean to say producer and engineer, but I did read that composer word came out because I was just writing about another composer. But I read that your dad was a composer and a music director, and that as the result of his passing in 2013, you'd inherited all this software and mixer synth stuff equipment that he was using to do some of the work that he did, and that sort of set you off on your path in the studio, so to speak, and that you'd also, I read, got an apprenticeship at a recording studio in Burbank. Can you talk a little bit about some of the lesser known parts of this chapter of your journey, the whole studio facet of it, production, and or like challenges or lessons that came along?
Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing, as you kind of mentioned, really did start for me when my dad passed away. I was actually booked. I was acting still full time back then, and I was booked on a film in Chicago. I used that downtime to really start to kind of play with Logic at the time, which my dad had, excuse me, been using as a composer and a music director. He has had like his home set up and his studio space, and when I got those things, I just began to play with them. I felt, I don't know, maybe it was maybe subconsciously I felt closer to him doing it. I'm like, I don't really know what really led me to kind of start diving into it, but as soon as I sat down with it, I kind of realized like not only that I could do it, but I was actually like pretty good at putting together tracks and starting to like whip up some different beats and some different production ideas and playing with some different synths and plugging things in and affecting them. And it just kind of spiraled into this first kind of a passion type of thing that I just kind of wanted to do it all the time. And then I really realized that it was kind of taking over my interest and piquing my, where I wanted to see kind of myself go in a career sense. And I remember just kind of like sitting on my hill over here in Echo Park where I had just moved to. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't want to act anymore. I had been doing it for over 15 years. And I always told myself I would never quit unless it was, something that I loved more. Because I didn't want to just be like another actor in LA that decided to like stop acting and, got rid of my agents and, but that is essentially what I did. And music was the space that filled that for me. So I ended up getting an apprenticeship over through Recording Connection, which some people don't really know about, but that's an amazing program. If you live in a city that has the kind of capability of having that program, you can call Recording Connection, set it up with them, and they will link you up to studios that are kind of in partnership with them in any major city. And I ended up connecting with them, and I went out on some different interviews to some of the studios that were, holding hands with them in their program. And I ended up over at ES Audio over in Burbank. I met Donnie Baker, who owns the studio there, and he ended up becoming my mentor. And Donnie's been around for a long time. I really wanted I wanted a mentor who had been around. I didn't want just kind of somebody new and up and coming and just kind of like fresh on the scene. I really wanted somebody with kind of old school knowledge. And Donnie's been around. I mean, he was back on like Madonna's tour in the 90s as a live mixer. He mixed like Michael Bolton and hung out with Mariah Carey when she was a backup singer. He had like stories to tell. He had experience, and that's really what I wanted. So it was very interesting to kind of come into a studio world, which was new for me because any of my music background had really come from, just kind of experiencing it through my dad, through a lot of musical theater growing up, through kind of more of a music and in a live world as opposed to the studio and the recording process. So when I got in there, it was very overwhelming for me. And I remember sitting down at the console for the first day, and it just felt like I was sitting down in a spaceship. And I wasn't young either, like especially for nowadays. I mean, I was 28 years old, and the first time I was ever walking into a recording studio and looking at that, saying like, "Oh, I'm going to be a professional engineer and producer." So, it was definitely a challenge to kind of get over that mental hump, knowing that a lot of even the kids that were coming in, producers and engineers in the studio, they started this in high school. They were taking Ableton in high school. They already knew how to come in and produce out at a track electronically and stuff. And here I was at 28 years old, never even knowing what a compressor does. It was definitely kind of a mental hump to get over. But I really, when I say I'm going to do something, that's kind of like what I do. I just stick to it and I do it. And I don't do it until I say I keep doing it until I say I'll stop doing it. I just kind of pushed myself through it. I mean, I really dove in headfirst into the studio realm. I wasn't quite sure where it would lead. My younger sister, her name's Jo, and she's actually in a band with me. We have a band called Lexington Kills, and she was just finishing up music school at Cal Arts up in Valencia, and was kind of embarking on her own music journey. And I figured to myself, if one thing I knew she had the goods, and if I could produce and create and engineer her music for her, then that would be my first target. And so I kind of went into the whole experience with this mindset that, if nothing else, that this skill that I'm here working and that I'm trying to hone in on is something that I can use to help my younger sister and her career and utilize her amazing voice as an artist. So that was really kind of the groundwork of how it all started. And then chance would have it, God would have it, that it was kind of this my calling, I guess. And I really snowballed very quickly for me once I really kind of surrendered to the process and just kind of dove in headfirst into the whole world of music and recording and production.
Did you say that you play in the band with her? And also, did you say the name of the band is Lexington Kills?
Yes, we do. It's our band together. It's usually us, and then we have two more. We have a violinist and a drummer as well.
It's so crazy that you are so into folk, because just based on the stuff that most of the work that I've listened to that you've engineered and even your own recorded work, can you talk about where or the origins of the folk influence that you and your sister have?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think some of it probably has to do that we grew up listening to a lot of that genre. I mean, we were at heart we're country kids that like grew up between, upstate New York and in Maine on a farm homeschooled. So, we grew up with a lot of kind of a very country folky type background, and this influence of that kind of music. I think we were also just very drawn to the kind of poeticness and the emotional sense of that whole genre. And we were listening to a lot of Angus and Julia Stone and the Civil Wars and people like that. This is back probably, oh gosh, I don't know, like, early, mid 2000s there around 2010, 11, we were really starting to really hone in on these kind of groups and these duos. And we were really just touched and affected by them, I think. And we would just sit there after my dad passed. It was very therapeutic for us to sit down with our guitars together and we would just write. We would just kind of, it was almost like therapy sessions, honestly, for us. And we would just sit together and write for hours and play stuff together and go back and forth. And then I don't know, we kind of almost joked a little bit more than anything else, kind of about, it'd be fun to play some shows together. She was, like I mentioned, she was up in music school. So we had some kind of like recording capabilities through her being at the school. And we started to kind of lay down some stuff on a couple of projects that she wanted to do. And I mean, it really just kind of became this thing that once I started getting involved in the engineering and production side and got my apprenticeship at my recording studio, it really kind of showed us that we could really kind of take it to the next level. And then we kind of made our first album based off that experience and dove in a lot farther. We started like picking up and playing some more live shows and things around 2019. And we were getting very serious about trying to see what we could do in taking our second album to the next level and, just really push ourselves. But then, of course, that's when the pandemic hit. And yeah, that's kind of when we kind of lost some traction and started to work more stuff solo until this year is when we started to pick things back up again. And we've gotten back in the studio under the whole band project.
Nice. Well, I can't wait to hear some of the past work and new stuff. I read about your sister and that you'd done some work with her, like probably I'd read you produced something or engineered something for her, but I didn't know how to find her, but now I do. So I'll look for her
Yes.
music. So
Yes.
you have said in an interview that Monsters was very therapeutic for you. And I guess that you'd said that it kind of surrounds feelings of like insufficiency, which I assume is kind of self-reflective, and some failures that you perceive, maybe that you've had, or maybe that someone else had, and then also things that were hiding amidst, like some sort of self-destructive thoughts. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for our listeners?
The thing about Monsters was that I guess I really wasn't expecting this to even really be the first thing that I've come back with after so many years of not even, putting anything out as like as a solo artist or, just under my own self and my own name. And I wasn't expecting this to be the kind of route I went, but I came off of a couple of like really difficult years of just really understanding, a lot of ins and outs and some of the darker places of this business and just my own career and kind of the paths that I was led down, jumping hard and fast into into the world of music production. And, I opened up a music venue here in East Hollywood, Los Feliz area last year and got to really experience the all the good and the bad and the ugly of what that looks like to, run a live music venue that's getting a lot of attention in a city like Los Angeles. And I really saw a lot of sides of myself through that experience that I'm not proud of and that I never thought I would really see from myself. I think that this song and this video is very self-reflective and it is very therapeutic, but it's also one of the first times I think too, this EP in general, with my 5-song EP that I'm releasing in September, and this being the first single, I think that this is the first time I've maybe even villainized myself at all in my music. I tend to, I'll get introspective, I'll look inside, I'll pick apart the pieces, but I don't tend to usually just flat out kind of like call myself the monster, call myself a villain, call myself the one that is effing everything up. And this time it was kind of just what came off of my chest and where this went. And it's not just that cut and dry though, it's not just a linear type of, oh, like I'm the bad guy and I messed up. It's more of like the monsters being all the sides of who I am and who anyone is. And that we have those dark corners, we have those meetings with ourselves under the bed when we sometimes have to look inward and sometimes we find out that we might even be the monster, when we might be scared of our monsters under our bed. We might be, we might be friends with them. We might miss them, which is elements of how I felt in this song too, because they're all the different pieces of who I am. And sometimes that all leads us to really realize that we're actually the monster the whole time. And that was kind of where I took the song when I wrote it and how it came out, because I didn't want it to just be also the bad and the ugly side of those parts of us. Like there's an element of what I think one of my favorite lines in the song is I say, they look sad, they don't know me anymore. I've changed so much, my skin has shed. That kind of a line is almost in a reference to almost like the friendship we create with those parts of ourselves too, and those different sides. Like, that's it's not just the ugly sides of us and the villains that are in us, but sometimes it's like it's the creativity that we have. It's the pieces of us that come from, maybe our roots, who we were as children, and that we miss that kid who lives inside of us. I think it's a lot more complex than just good or bad, but I really wanted to dive into that on this track, and it was something more than anything I think that I needed to get off of my chest for me. And I wasn't even sure at first if this was going to be, a full single and a video and a thing that we were going to really push and put out. But it really just became that. And it ended up being something that was very close to my heart and is a very therapeutic track that I just really needed to get off my own chest and put out.
The parts of you that you discovered and weren't too happy about, or that you reflect on that you weren't too happy about, was that like a product of the stress of that time in your life, or was it just the world of music venue management or something else entirely?
I would think, maybe a little bit of everything, but definitely the stresses and the workload. I mean, I am no like I'm no stranger to hard work. I think I've worked really hard my entire life, and I think the last few years especially I have taken that kind of work ethic to a whole almost unhealthy type of level. I get very driven by my need to see things get done that I want to see get done. I love to feel progress in a very tangible sense, and sometimes that draws me and drives me into kind of a work frenzy that can be very unhealthy. And taking on something as big as even a music venue like I did last year, and it wasn't even how me and my partners at the time decided. We were just looking to open up something small and kind of something to grow, and a multi-art complex that had recording studios and live spaces. We ended up taking over the Rockwell, which is an extremely significant landmark over here on the east side and in Los Feliz, with a lot of history and a very big built-in following and fan base within the city here. I think off of the jump, that was a little bit of a maybe not amazing decision. It was really what actually fell into our laps, which is what's kind of crazy. It wasn't that we were like pushing so hard to get that spot. It's just kind of the one that seemed right and worked out. But we were new coming into this, and the minute we came in, it was all eyes on us. And I was sitting down with major labels within like a few weeks of us even being open, and having people try to come through. And I just don't know if I was prepared for all that quite yet. I know our team certainly was not. And it was just a lot of work. And through that stress and that work and that drive, and now all of these eyes are on you, and you don't want to fail, and you're seeing the relationships build all of a sudden in your career that you have been waiting years to see happen. And you just push and push and push and push until it becomes unhealthy, and you're working so much. And it really kind of came crashing down a bit around me. And yeah, I mean, it also found that it was taking me away from a lot of the music production that I was even meant to be doing there through our studios that we were going to open. And we hadn't even really had the chance to really explore that whole side of what we were doing. And that kind of began to eat away at my soul a bit, because, that's really what I'm out here to do. And what I think like my God-given purpose is to produce and create and engineer music and do all that and tell people stories through music. And I wasn't really doing much of that. And it really all began to kind of came toppling down around me, and sent me into some pretty bad depression at the time. And, a lot of turning inward and looking inward. But that was also, I think part of the good thing that came out of it is sometimes when we're forced to look so deep inside, we end up kind of finding other things we needed to check on as well, and other things that we maybe needed to pay attention to within ourselves and maybe need to fix. So I don't regret any of the journey or any of the things. I've learned a lot over the past year for sure as a producer and a businessman and just, in a lot of different ways and just even who I am and myself. But that was definitely a lot of the reflection of kind of how, this whole project came about. And I think that, it's good to push ourselves. And I have always kind of pushed myself up to or sometimes past that limit of, of where maybe I even should sometimes. But also, I think we have to take risks and we have to dive in head first into things sometimes when even if people are telling us, no, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. Not that there's people in my life whose opinion I don't, I definitely respect and have a lot of weight in what they say to me. I think that, you do have to go out and take those risks and you won't know until you try and nobody knows you better than you. So paying attention to yourself and listening to your gut is so important.
Sure. And I can relate to much of of your experience personally. Um, have you had were you able to close that chapter in regards to like the business or to disassociate yourself with it somewhat?
Yes, I definitely was, it was definitely a little bit of a brief time coming in from last year into the new year into 2023 that took a little bit of really finding my feet again. I was pretty derailed to be honest from the whole experience. And it kind of was one of those things when you wake up after, XYZ has, gone down and now you're sitting there and you're kind of just like, what just happened? Like it feels almost like a dream a little bit. You just feel what just really happened in my life. And I was really going through it at that time coming into the new year, but I knew that I wanted to get back heavy into really getting my music production back up and running full time and working with the artists again full time that like I had been doing for the past couple of years before that. And it was definitely hard to jump back in, and I do think that I overcompensated a little bit. I took on so many projects coming into the new year that even then my other engineer and producer friends around me were like, Sam, what are you doing? Like, dude, this is crazy. And it definitely, I made it through. Then I knew by the time I kind of saw the timelines, lining up from the different management groups or the artists and the people that I was working with, it was a really, really crazy heavy June, July release for me for just across the board. I put out what, 3 albums, 2 EPs, and like how many singles within a month span. It was very crazy. It's been a lot. Just still kind of just like just trickling off the tail end of all that. And it was a lot. I'm going as things are dropping here now. I'm showing up. I work very closely with Grant Owens with We Found New Music, which is an amazing emerging artist platform out here. And I'll show up to the events and other people in my line of work or that producer engineer, they're coming up to me and they're like, Sam, seriously, like, are you okay? Like, we're seeing how much music you're putting out and we know what this takes and how much time is spent and you are producing, you're mixing, you're mastering, you're doing everything and you're putting all this out. And they're like, are you actually okay right now? And they're like, we're half kidding, but we're actually half serious. And and it was a lot to take on this year. I really pushed the limit on how much I think I could be in the studio, and it's definitely kind of I've touched the water a little bit, and it's time to like back out just a touch. This past 6 months has been very grueling in the studio, and how many hours I've had to put in to make sure that things came out on time and getting the mixes right, getting the production right, finishing up the masters myself. I really don't need to take on as much as I have this year across the board on all these projects, but at the other end of it, it is very exciting to see, what I think I'm capable of and to see all of that kind of work come out in such a tidal wave.
And will you come up for air soon?
I'm actually going to take I'm going to take this is like a new thing that's just kind of, I've just started talking about and it's kind of put out into more of the public eye, but I'm going to be actually moving to New York in September, about an hour and a half north of the city. And I'm going to just kind of like really use this time, since in the last 2 years I haven't had a lot of time to decompress and really take some time to myself and work on some just personal projects. I would like to go and record my new album, which I haven't had a chance to do. It's only been mostly written and demoed, but I'm going to go up there where my family's from, up outside of Hudson, and just take some time to myself and kind of work on some leveling up just kind of as a producer and as a musician, and take some time to be out in nature in the woods, kind of have like a moment to myself and really work and be inspired in a new way, which is not quite in the accessibility and fast-paced life I've been here in LA, that I've had here in LA over the past couple of years. And I haven't really left LA in 17 years since I moved out here. So this will be a nice switch up and a change for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a big change. And I was actually going to ask you about New York, but I heard that you have some cool opportunities there as well.
I do. I've definitely I have a lot of network that I have my own reach out in New York City, and especially through working with We Found New Music and some of the other platforms I'm with. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of New York artists that have come through LA as well. So I haven't really had the opportunity to go out there in the city and just kind of sit down and start working with some of these new collaborations and artists and teams out there. And this is going to be the first time for me that I'm going to be able to have that accessibility right there. And I'll be down in the city a bunch working on some new stuff and kind of just testing the water over there and trying to kind of put my legs into a new scene and see what I can get from it and what I can bring to the table as, as a Los Angeles producer. And I think it's going to be really exciting. A couple new international types of jobs I'm actually working on as well that are a little under, still kind of hush, but I've got some international stuff on the table for the first time as well, and then a couple projects in a couple different countries right now. So I'm very excited about that as well.
Nice. Sounds terribly exciting. Well, I wish you best of luck with that for sure. That'll be great.
Thanks.
Okay, last question, I think. You've you may have to think sort of past tense because it sounds like and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you perhaps have a reputation in the business now where your work ethic and just sort of reputation is getting new opportunities in your realm, in your radar on a regular basis. But if you are still doing things to get noticed as a producer, or like I said, if you can think back to when you were before you got to this point, if it's if it's that much different, the question would be how are you getting noticed outside of your published work? And by that I mean, what kinds of things did you do or have you done or do you do that helps bring opportunity your way?
That's a good question. I think that I've been very fortunate in this way. My journey of just like anyone's journey is very unique and its own thing. I think one thing that really helped me in getting maybe the attention or any kind of like, creating progress in that way for me was that I've been out in LA for 17 years. So there's quite a network that I have out here already. And when I decided to go into music, although I was switching gears, as an artist, I definitely did have quite a serious network of people and entertainers out here already, and that did help me a lot. But I really do think, it's kind of the stereotypical cliche that we hear a lot, but there's really just so much truth in it, and that is that it's really comes down to hard work. If you outside of if you're going to obviously go out and you're going to get a PR agent, you're going to have a good PR team, you're going to spend the money, you're going to put that together, and yeah, you're going to get that kind of, obviously you're going to get exactly hopefully what you pay for, but so much else outside of that comes down to really putting yourself out there and working so hard. When I first started producing and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to start getting clients, how I was going to get my name out there as a producer, I was going to so many shows a week and just going to anything that I could hear of, or if I had a friend playing at some kind of lineup or there was this emerging artist thing going on, I would show up there and I would listen to all the artists. I would pay attention, find the ones I like. Right after the show, I'd walk right up to them, give them a business card and go, "Hi, my name's Sam. I don't know if you have a music producer, but I produce music. And if you ever want to talk about some production or I can send you some tracks, let me know." And I did that over and over and over and over again. And I just would go through cards like nobody's business. I had to just like keep refilling my card holder every week because I was just going around and giving my card out to everybody. And I honestly, this is a fake it till you make it. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I was a new producer. I knew that I could, had enough skill in certain ways, or I'd pick artists that I felt like, it would be a little easier for me to kind of really mesh with or vibe with, or I thought like I could bring something to the table for them. But, I just went out there and really put myself out like that until one person started hiring me, the next one started hiring me, the next one. And then it just kind of slowly became, word of mouth. I think that I've been very fortunate too. I mean, the pandemic really did help me a lot too. I know it was a really difficult time for so many people, but it really did give me the chance to hone in and focus in on what I was trying to do as a producer and kind of brand myself and my music. And I, made a home setup during that time that gave me the capability of getting stuff done without needing a full studio out there. And it really did launch me. And that's how I kind of got the ball rolling, really. I mean, once I kind of got a few people on the go that were putting out some good stuff and that they realized that I could do it while studios were closed as well, it really snowballed fast for me. But it does come down to the hard work and putting yourself out there. And I have younger producers or new producers come up to me and ask me kind of like, how to get clients, how to break through that wall, how to, get to a place where people will seek you out for it. And I always tell people the same thing. And that's like, if you think that you're working as hard as you can, then work harder. Like that's really what it comes down to. I spend a lot of hours in the studio and making a lot of different songs. There was a time there where I was making at least a beat a day. Now it's like I have like almost a session a day, so that's a whole different kind of thing. But when I first started, that's really what I was doing. I was sitting down and making a new song, a new beat every single day, and just pushing myself and just trying to get people to hear what I was doing by getting them in the studio with me. And I also think that creating a great in studio environment and being a kind of producer that is, has some kind of moral compass, it really cares about the people around them, really creates an intimate relationship within the business that I do with my artists. That's what keeps people coming back for more. And it's a very big part of it. It's not just your sounds. It's not just your beats. It's not just how good you are at playing the guitar or the keys. It's none of that. It's so much deeper than that. And I think that a lot of my success has definitely been to the fact that I, have created really amazing relationships with the people that I work with and, create an environment that makes people want to come back for more every time.
That's a great story and some good advice in there too. Should we still carry business cards when we're out trying to get our music into the world and network?
Absolutely. I'm all about it. I mean, granted now too, I know, Instagram and everything, it's so easy, but there is something really special about a card, I will say. There's something special about walking up to somebody and handing them, a nicely made silk finished card, business card with your name on it and everything. It's a little different than it's like, hey, let me get your Instagram. That still works. I mean, I do that multiple times a week and on the go and meeting with people, and I get new artists and great new contacts and all the times through social media and stuff. It's a very powerful tool when you use it correctly. But there is definitely something to be said about, going to a show and going out there and going to somewhere like the Viper Room or, going to like Ziggy at We Found New Music or something like that and showing up there as a producer and going up to an artist after a show and being like, here's my card, here's my information, like look me up. That you'll remember that. People will remember that. It's not just another social media exchange. People will remember that. If you can do both, then even better, as many points of contact as possible. But hey, I'm all about it. I'm a little old school like that sometimes, but I mean, I love it.
I think it's good. Yeah, and it's fucking hard to find someone's Instagram when they put it on your phone like a week later when you're trying to remember them. So that card probably sits in their wallet the whole time. Like, oh yeah, I got to call it Sam, guys. That's good. I like it.
Exactly. It ends up on your bedside table, and there's gonna be some point they look over and they see that. So like that's just the truth. You're so right.
All right. Well, speaking of Instagram, it looks like you're most active there. And I'm going to mention one account just so people, because it looks like they can find everything about you from there. And it's Sam J Garfield or at Sam J Garfield on Instagram.
Correct. Yeah, that's pretty much my main social media squeeze. Everything's kind of right there. My links are all in one place. That the platform works well with kind of what I like to do to put out content. So that's kind of where you'll find me most. But yeah, at Sam J Garfield on pretty much all social media and definitely on Instagram.
Cool. It's great talking with you, man.
Yeah, Sam, thank you so much. It's been very fun.
This episode was powered by Podcast Startup. If you feel you need a little help with that podcast you're contemplating, Podcast Startup may be just the thing for you. Podcast Startup is a program designed for new podcasters. Did you know that most podcasts don't make it past their first few episodes? That's right. They start, they stall, and then they die. Sustaining a podcast ain't easy. It's commitment. A lack of planning and misaligned expectations are a recipe for fast burnout and fade out for podcasters. This is exactly the kind of thing that Podcast Startup was designed to help you with. If you're intrigued, if you want to start a podcast the right way, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup to learn more and to receive free podcast startup tips from yours truly. Thank you for listening. You can leave us feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you love this podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the many ways of showing your love and support. Your support does indeed equal love. The series music you heard in this episode is New Gods Part 2 by yours truly. Find links for all the places to hear the full version with vocals by yours truly at rabonzo.com. If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle has amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, tickets, and more, plus tools that can capture detailed fan data for you. Try it at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code RABONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. Find links for all the people and things talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Peace, love, and a whole lot of gratitude.